To the west of the Horn of Africa, between South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the area of the Great Lakes, even the small state of Uganda now welcomes over 1.5 million human beings, fleeing from the small and big conflicts that have also led to the development of the Kakuma refugee camps in Kenya and Juba in South Sudan. It is Palabek, almost at the northern border of the country, that has become a landing place for thousands of men, women and children. This is also thanks to the generosity of the local government that provides aid and above all work permits. The Salesians have been present in Palabek since the opening of the camp in 2017, and they have already conquered the hearts of the people. The Salesians take care of the animation in the Christian communities scattered in the camp, evangelizing with simplicity, and to educate children and young people through schooling, offering themselves as a reference point for their growth in support of families. There is very much work. The number of refugees has grown rapidly. Currently, it is estimated to be 40,000, mostly from South Sudan. They are people who need everything because they have escaped only with the clothes they were wearing and their children in their arms. It was Monday morning. It was 8, and we were at school when we heard shooting, and so we started running towards the forest. I tried to reach my parents, but it was not possible. We slept one night in the forest. Then we managed to reach Ngumoromo. I was attending the 4th year, but I had to interrupt my studies and exams because of the war.
Meanwhile, hundreds of South Sudanese refugees have crossed into Uganda for a second day in a row. They were displaced in fighting between South Sudanese government troops and opposition fighters. Those clashes took place in the town of Pajok. Some reports say civilians were caught in the crossfire, but the South Sudanese government denies that. Refugees in Uganda have been recounting their ordeal. It's believed more than 3,000 people escaped the clashes in Pajok.
I'm a nursery and primary school.
I am a teacher of kindergarten and primary school. When the war started in Pajok, the soldiers arrived. They surrounded us, and at that moment we started to hear shots everywhere. I ran home and there was no one. So I went back to school, but when I arrived, I did not find them. I started running everywhere because the children were no longer there. I was without my children. I ran until I reached Ngomoromo, where I found some of my children, but others were arrested. One of my daughters was arrested and imprisoned. Here's what happened to Pajok. I come from Pajok. When the soldiers arrived, I had to abandon my house, which was destroyed. Only the elderly remained. They told us to leave, and I told them it was just a poor hut. My wife and I fell to the ground in the bushes. They turned back and they laughed, saying, "These are old. Do not kill them. They will die because their children are gone and they have no help. Let's not waste our bullets." So us elderly remained, with nothing to eat and drink. We escaped to Uganda and reached Ngomoromo. We had to move slowly. Now we try to survive. There is no wood for cooking, no products to buy. We eat beans and polenta, and when we are exhausted, we ask our neighbors. Only God helps us to stay alive. Like Agnes, Rose and Moses, many come from Pajok.
Camp comprises of number 43,000 people. These people are mostly of the languages of Acholi, Lutuko, Lango, Bari and few Dinkas. and they are from the diocese of Majok and Terit from the South Sudan. There were times when I used to sit with these people and sit and cry because the stories were very heart-touching and very pathetic. And they don't have food to eat and the clothes to wear, and they're worried about the children. They are displaced in different parts of the camp, and some died on the way, their parents and their brothers and sisters, and it is very discouraging to hear.
In Uganda, the lives of refugees are more humane than in other countries. Camps, for example, are called settlements, and little by little a plot of 30 square meters of land is assigned where to build a small house and have a few meters of vegetable garden to farm. The Salesians commit themselves to doing pastoral work and evangelization, educational work and schooling. With the little ones, therefore, literacy. And for the older ones, starting in a vocational training centre so that no one remains without doing nothing. And on the contrary, returning home in the future, having learned a trade. Most of the inhabitants of Palabek's humanitarian settlement are in fact women, children and the elderly who manage to escape. The men remain to fight in this or that faction and to defend the little that was there.
So you can see that woman going, they have harvested firewood and they are going to use it as fuel for cooking. So this has a lot of issues between the refugees and the host communities, considering the fact that there used to be only 200 households in this piece of land, the local population. And now we have refugees brought in, over 40,000 refugees brought in. So this has brought pressure on the resources, in particular vegetation. And the threat and the fear is that if we continue to use this vegetable without replacing it, without planting trees, this place will be worst off. We will have no trees, no windbreaks, and the environment will get spoiled. And so we have been lobbying and emphasizing to the agencies and the OPM and the UNHCR and the local authorities so that the refugees are given seedlings so that they plant.
The work of the Salesians is incessant. They share the difficulties of the people and bear witness to the gospel with the welcome and attention towards the most marginalized and weak, that is, the young, the elderly, and the sick.
I think the main challenge is the education and evangelization. And so there is a need, for example, knowing that there are many Christians, many Catholic Christians, there is a need for new chapels because the people, they want really to gather for prayer, for the sacraments, for the Eucharist, and so on.
I saw a little Christian community praying under the trees. And I went to the catechist and I introduced myself and I said, I'm a priest, I want to say Mass. It was on the feast of Corpus Christi, 18th of June. And within a minute or two, we had a wonderful celebration of the Eucharist. At the end of the Mass, the catechist asked me, Father, will you come to celebrate Mass for us next week? I just looked around and I said, yes, I will come. I came following week and I happened to see a large community of nearly 400 people praying under a large tree. It moved me. And they told me that they had not been having Mass for nearly a year. Then every week, almost every week, I started coming to the settlement.
Father Ladza Arazu was born in South India, but has been in Africa since 1990, when he began his formation in East Africa. After his priestly ordination, he was immediately sent to Uganda, where he spent his ministry in schools for 20 years. Then he felt within himself a special call to work with the refugees. Every day, despite the fatigue, he is happy to work with them. because he is the first to be enriched.
There are many things to do. About activities, special activities, I think from the beginning we can do a lot for the primary schools and secondary schools.
%86% of the population of the camp are women and children, and they are young people. And more than 60% are either teenagers or they are children. And of course, there are below the age of 3, there are hundreds and thousands of children. So these young people, these vulnerable young people who are living in the camp is the motivation for us to stay, motivation for us to commit ourselves for their education and evangelization, to care for them and to give them an integral formation.
For the inhabitants of the settlement of Palabeg, hearing talk about God really means hearing the good news of a life full of hope, new. A life in which they themselves, poor, forgotten, and without a country, are dear to God. A life in which brotherhood and sharing are possible.
I've been very pleased to have the Salesians because they responded very quickly to support the pastoral needs of the refugees. And they have projects for establishing schools so that the future of this, especially the young generation of refugees who have run there, is ensured. They're educated. When they go back, they will have the responsibility of running their country. This, I thought, was a holistic approach. You don't only deal with the needs of the body, but also you deal with the needs of the spirit. My greatest challenge I'm facing now, reflecting over the situations of war and so on everywhere, is how can we reawaken in ourselves as humanity the sense of being human to one another, so that nobody is a stranger in the company of another human being, because we are really, in truth, we're all of one species on this planet, and we should learn to live as one family, united, harmonious, and peaceful.